The frigid air of the Soviet Union in the 1960s held secrets, whispered in hushed tones amongst the concrete apartment blocks and under the stern gaze of Stalinist statues. But one secret, buried deep within the heart of a seemingly ordinary man, would eventually shatter the illusion of peace and reveal a darkness that chilled the blood. This is the story of Anatoly Slivko, a name that barely registers in the annals of true crime, yet hides a tale of calculated brutality and the twisted logic of a serial killer. A story that stands in stark contrast to the Hollywood scandals that often grace the front pages. A story of a different kind of evil. Anatoly Slivko was, on the surface, an unremarkable individual. Born in 1939, his life unfolded against the backdrop of a nation still reeling from the devastation of World War II. He wasn't a revolutionary, a political agitator, or a hardened criminal. He was, according to those who knew him, a man of mild manners, a member of the Young Pioneers, a youth organization similar to the Boy Scouts. He ran a youth club called the Eagles, where he seemed to enjoy mentoring young boys, organizing activities and outings. He was, in short, the kind of person you wouldn't expect to be capable of the unspeakable. His hometown, a nondescript industrial city in the Urals region, was a place of gray facades and predictable routines. Life moved at a measured pace, punctuated by the collective efforts of socialist labor and the ever-present ideological pronouncements broadcast from public loudspeakers. Within this seemingly monolithic society, Slivko cultivated an image of civic responsibility, a model citizen participating actively in the communal life of his small town. His involvement with the Eagles provided him with a perfect cover, a veneer of wholesome mentorship that masked his burgeoning, monstrous desires. The boys who flocked to his club, eager for adventure and guidance, saw him as a dependable figure, a knowledgeable leader who fostered a sense of camaraderie and belonging. They participated in hikes through the rugged, pine-scented forests surrounding the town, learned to tie knots, and played organized games under his watchful, yet deceptive, eye. This nurturing environment, a stark contrast to the harsh realities of Soviet life for many, made his eventual betrayal all the more devastating. The timeline of Slivko's crimes is a fragmented mosaic pieced together from confessions, witness statements, and the grim evidence found at the scenes of his atrocities. The first known murder took place in 1957. He preyed on these young boys, aged between 8 and 15, systematically ending their lives over the course of several years. The exact number of victims remains uncertain, though estimates typically range between 7 and 8 boys. What is certain is the calculated nature of his actions. He was a hunter, stalking his prey with chilling precision, his actions carefully planned and executed. The victims were often boys who had sought out Slivko's tutelage, drawn in by his charisma and the promise of exciting activities. He would often lure them away from their families on excursions into the wilderness, to secluded spots in the dense taiga or along the banks of the icy Ural River. These were places where their laughter and their youthful exuberance would be swallowed by the vastness of nature, unseen and unheard. The confessions, when they eventually came, painted a horrifying picture of meticulous planning. Slivko would observe his potential victims, studying their routines, their vulnerabilities, and the trust they placed in him. He then orchestrated their disappearances, making it seem as though they had simply wandered off or met with an accident in the unforgiving landscape. The discovery of the first body sparked a wave of fear and suspicion in the community. Parents were terrified, keeping their children close, and the local authorities began to investigate, struggling to find a rational explanation for the disappearances. The search began, painstakingly combing the surrounding forests, fields, and the riverbanks. Each passing day deepened the fear, casting a pall of grief and anxiety over the community. The initial reports of missing children were met with a collective shrug from some, attributed to the inherent dangers of unsupervised childhood in a vast country. But as the disappearances mounted, a chilling pattern began to emerge. The local militia, a force more accustomed to dealing with petty theft and drunken brawls than with serial homicide, found themselves overwhelmed and out of their depth. They interviewed distraught parents, pieced together fragmented accounts from frightened children who had narrowly escaped Slivko's clutches. The vast, untamed landscape of the Urals, normally a source of natural beauty and recreation, transformed into a landscape of dread, each rustle of leaves and snap of a twig potentially signaling the presence of a predator. The breakthrough in the case, as is often the case with serial killers operating for extended periods, came not through a brilliant investigative leap, but through a series of fortunate coincidences and the eventual breakdown of the perpetrator's carefully constructed facade. It's believed that persistent questioning by some dedicated investigators, coupled with the immense psychological pressure of his double life, eventually led to Slivko's undoing. The specifics of how he was apprehended are somewhat obscure, but it's understood that a tip-off, perhaps from someone who witnessed something suspicious during one of his excursions with the boys, combined with evidence found near one of the burial sites, finally placed him under intense scrutiny. The interrogation rooms, likely stark and utilitarian, became the stage for a grim confrontation. Slivko, initially defiant, eventually crumbled under the relentless pressure, his carefully crafted mask of normalcy beginning to disintegrate, revealing the horrifying truth beneath. The trial was held in secret. The specifics of the case were withheld from the public. Slivko confessed to the crimes, describing them with a cold detachment that sent a chill through the courtroom. He spoke of a fascination with death, a perverse desire to witness the final moments of his victims, to experience the ultimate control over another human being. His motive remained a dark mystery. He claimed a need to test his courage, to conquer his own fear of death. This chilling, self-justifying excuse was met with shock and horror. The court proceedings were shrouded in secrecy, a common practice in the Soviet Union for cases deemed sensitive or potentially damaging to the state's image. This lack of public transparency only added to the unease and speculation that simmered beneath the surface of the community. The psychologists and psychiatrists tasked with evaluating Slivko found a deeply disturbed individual, one whose childhood experiences, though not explicitly detailed in publicly available records, likely contributed to his warped psyche. His claims of testing his own courage against the fear of death reveal a profound egocentrism and a chilling disconnect from the humanity of his victims. He viewed them not as children with bright futures, but as instruments for his own macabre psychological experiments. In 1963, Anatoly Slivko was found guilty and sentenced to death. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the community, but the wound of his crimes would never fully heal. He was executed by firing squad, his life ending as quietly as it had begun, leaving behind a legacy of unimaginable horror. The swiftness of the sentencing, while providing a legal conclusion, did little to assuage the profound sense of violation experienced by the families and the wider community. The finality of the death penalty, a brutal punctuation mark on a series of brutal acts, underscored the gravity of his transgressions. The execution itself, carried out in a manner befitting Soviet judicial practice, was a stark and final severing of his existence from the world he had so profoundly terrorized. The impact of Slivko's crimes reverberates even today. The families of the victims were left to grapple with the unimaginable grief of losing their children to a man they once trusted. The community was scarred, the innocence of youth forever tainted. The case exposed the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary-seeming individuals. It served as a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity and the fragility of life. The faces of the missing boys, once full of life and promise, became etched into the collective memory of the town, their potential futures extinguished by a chilling, calculated evil. The lingering questions about how such a predator could operate undetected for so long, and how his dark nature remained hidden behind a facade of civic virtue, continued to haunt the survivors and the investigators alike. In the wake of his crimes, the case of Anatoly Slivko serves as a grim reminder of the unseen darkness that can fester within society. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of misplaced trust, the power of manipulation, and the unimaginable capacity for evil that can exist within the human heart. The case leaves us to grapple with uncomfortable questions about human nature, about the nature of evil, and how we can try to identify and prevent such horrors from ever occurring again. The Soviet system, with its emphasis on collective good and conformity, often struggled to acknowledge or effectively address individual pathology of this magnitude, inadvertently creating, in the end, the story of Anatoly Slivko is a chilling reminder of the importance of vigilance, of the need to protect the vulnerable, and the enduring power of the human spirit to survive even the most horrific of circumstances. It is a story that demands our attention, not because it is sensational, but because it is a stark illustration of the darkness that lies within us all. The stark contrast between the idyllic image of the young pioneers and the brutal reality of Slivko's actions serves as a potent symbol of how evil can wear a benevolent mask, lurking in the most unexpected of places and preying on the most innocent of hearts.